were hid for many days. Suddenly he opened the door and they entered into the market where the service was going on, and they say, repent, for the wages of sin is death. Who are these people? Where are you coming from? Our season was just announced. Nobody was there. We were in a closed room, but fire came. When God wants to announce your season, he doesn't need to do it in a stadium. It's religious men that are looking for men to stand and say, this is this person, and they are looking for fraternity. No, you can't do eternal service like that. Eternal ordinations are activated by fire. E.A. Adeboye, I respect grace, and God knows that I respect with all my heart. But as mighty as he is, it's not the seal of divine approval. Himself will wait until God fall upon you before he lays his hand on you. When men become big, they wait for God. They know they don't do things in the flesh. But you see, our generation, we are looking for people to gather, so that in the midst of 5,000 people, they will now call you out and say, this is an apostle. And then you will come and say, well, I was announced an apostle. You will go nowhere. But if you are in your bedroom and that fire comes upon you, you don't need to tell anybody. When you come out, the fire itself will announce you that there's something this man carries that is of heaven. This is what the disciples know. They didn't come out and say, we're with Jesus Christ. Did you see me that day when Jesus was preaching in the market? I was the one standing by his left hand side. Are you not aware? Me that was carrying the purse. Okay, wait. Since you don't remember, let me tell you. That day that Mary poured oil on his leg, didn't you see that I came to complain? That's our generation. We carry pictures, put everywhere. We try everything to showcase human validation, but heavenly validation is not on our head. The disciples didn't tell anybody. It was the people that discerned. When they saw the fire that was on Jesus on them, they said, these men have been with Christ. Fire is what activates your season. God can say in 2020 he will make you a prophet. If the fire doesn't come, you will not become. It's not enough to carry a prophetic word. You must carry a seal into the world, and that seal is fire. It's fire, but many don't have it. Number 4, why is fire so important? Because fire purifies. The reason you can walk through a corrupt world and remain a witness is because you're on fire. There are many things you hear that will dent your soul. There are many things you will touch that will dent your soul. Some consciously and some unconsciously. But it doesn't matter whether it was conscious or unconscious. When you touch defilement, you will be defied. What will keep you pure is the fire of God that constantly purifies you. This is why it's so important. Because even though God activates your season, even if God validates you, even if God commissions you, the day you become defiled, you disqualify yourself. So you will need the insurance system of fire to constantly walk in the courts of God and bring the witness of Zion. The day your fire begins to go down, you have become vulnerable. You don't need a prophet to tell you. The day your fire begins to go down, just know that you are failure waiting to happen. You are a fall waiting to manifest. The only thing that will keep you going is as you keep burning like a flame. That's why he said, a man who is not on fire cannot bring service to God, because God knows that that man is potentially falling. In Malachi chapter 3 verse 2, he said, God will appear in his sanctuary and he will purify them and purge them by the fuller soap and by the purifying fire. And he said he will thoroughly purge the sons of Levi so that they will bring an acceptable worship or service to God. So when a man begins to lose his fire, even God will no longer receive his service, because he knows he's just waiting to fall. He has become empty. He has become a city without wall. It's just for the time the white beast will come, they will definitely devour him. But when a man is burning, he can walk through the sanctuary of God. At any time, he is qualified to bring service, because fire is an instrument of purification. When fire comes upon a man, he will of necessity purge him. And the goal of the purging is not just to say I am holy. The goal of the purging is to provoke acceptable worship. In Hebrews chapter 12 verse 28, he says, having received a kingdom that cannot be moved, let us receive grace whereby we serve God acceptably, for our God is a consuming fire. That means service and fire must always go hand in hand. The day fire departs, service ends. You can be singing, but you are not serving God. At best, you will be a vocalist. And the beauty of your worship will be the quality of your voice. But somebody who carries fire, when he comes up and he begins to sing, heaven moves. Through sounds, a man can download the government of Zion into BSU. You don't need prophets and apostles to bring government here. A psalmist can come to this campus and download heaven, download encounters, download angelic dimension, and he will set a revival in this land. Because it's not about the title you carry. It's about the weight of witness you can bring on account of the fire that is upon your life. When fire is on a man's life, his pulpit is not this wood. Where he manifests is in the lives of men. You will see somebody come up burning for God, and he tells you, I encountered Reverend Hughes. He comes up blazing. Things are happening everywhere. When you look at the people closely, you begin to see the signature of the men that touch them. When they speak in tongues, you can tell, I see Dr. Paul here. When they speak in tongues, you can tell, I see Reverend Chris here. So their manifestation ground is not the pulpit, it's in the lives of men. Because they have raised these men as offering to the Lord. So when you see people, you can see their signature on these people. They carry so much fire, so they became the burning incense in the lives of many. Why is fire important? It purifies you for service. Now, what is the fire of God? I will try to give you 3 definitions quickly. The first definition for the power of God is an unending passion for his presence, not for work. It's an unending zeal for the presence of God. He said, the zeal of my Father's house, not the zeal for service. The zeal of my Father's house has consumed me. In John chapter 2 verse 17, the zeal. A man can be preaching, he's not on fire. I'm preaching very well. A man can be singing, he's not on fire. When the fire of God is on your life, you are obsessed about the presence of God. You are literally obsessed. It becomes even difficult for you to leave the presence of God to do something else. God will have to push you to go out and serve him. You will be so obsessed about God that God becomes your all experientially, not what you say, who you are. The zeal of the Lord will eat you up. But I was sharing yesterday and I told them, close to 90% of believers have no walk with God. Because even though we are praying loud, shouting and doing a lot of activity, very few are still burning for God. In the days of our fathers, many of them went to sleep on mountains 7 days every month, some 14 days every month. And I'm not saying go to the mountain, because you can do it in your bedroom. But these guys were obsessed about God. When they sat down and they are talking, it's always about God. What God did to them, what God showed them. Every month somebody carries his bag. Every weekend he has gone to the mountain. On Monday he's coming back, and he's coming back to go to work. They were not idle. They were doing this. There was so much energy, because when they go there, they come back refreshed. Somebody can come from work and do a vigil alone in his bedroom from night till morning. You will hardly find Christians now that do individual vigils. Even when we come for corporate vigil, we use 1 hour to add drama. We use 3 hours for praise and worship. We use 4 hours for other things. Then we use 30 minutes to pray, because we don't have men that have stamina to contend in the spirit. So we look for all sorts of distraction. And even with that 1 hour of drama, 2 hours of dancing, some people are still sleeping, because the energy of God is no longer there. When you give them mic, they can preach, but they know they don't carry the energy of God. They don't have the stamina to stand in God's presence. There's no fire. You can shout because you have a baritone voice. I will tell you these things. I know it because I've experimented all of them. When you see people who shout, naturally they have a loud voice. So shouting is not necessarily a sign of fire. You can preach loud because you are young and there is so much secretion of adrenaline. But that you are preaching loud and fast does not mean you carry fire. If you want to find out the indicator of the fire of God in a man's life, find out how many hours can he tarry in God's presence. And not just because he's exercising his will, but because he's lost in intimacy. That's a man who is on fire. He stays with God and he loses track of everything. If you tap him, he comes from an encounter, and he can do it as a routine. One of the things that challenged me about Reverend Hughes' life, when we lived together for 2 years, Every day, 3 a.m. he has woken up. Every day. And he prays till morning. I say, what is this? Come, what are you doing here? What kind of discipline is this? Are you doing? I'm telling you. Every day. We will be around praying sometimes gisting in the parlor. The moment it's 10 o'clock, you say, man of God, good night. I say, wait now, let's complete this. He say, good night. Because he must wake up by 3 a.m. Even if he doesn't preach for the rest of his life, he's more on fire than many global evangelists. Because there is a force of the presence that commands his attention. That's the mystery of high places. The mystery of high places is that they command worship. So a man who understands the workings of his spirit, one of the things that show that is on fire is the pulling power of that spirit upon his soul. There is nothing he can do otherwise. Even if he's in the market, when that time of convergence comes, he will lose taste for everything. He can be in the office. When that time comes, the spirit begins to pull him. His soul can sense the moves and the movement of the spirit. He will pull him from wherever he is. Even if in the midst of a conversation, no matter how sweet he is, when that time comes, his body begins to itch him, because there is another fellowship, the fellowship of the divine. That's a man who is on fire. You are not on fire because you are shouting in church. You are not on fire because when prayer was going on, you carried the plastic chair up. You are not on fire because you are shouting and jumping everywhere. You are just being a young man. When you are 50 years old, you will drop the plastic chair and you will pray to God. Number 2, how do you know a man is on fire? The second sign of fire in a man's life is the move of the spirit in his soul. Every time there is a spiritual activity going on in his soul, that guy can be on a bike, a song is playing, he doesn't know how to shut it up. The Holy Ghost have taken over his space, because he has opened the door. Jesus said, I stand at the door and knock. If any man opens, he said, I will come in and sup with him. That's a man of fire. That man can be talking to you, God is talking to him at the same time. That man can be on a bike, God is talking to him. He wakes up in the morning and there's a song in his spirit. He doesn't activate it. His soul has become a spiritual embassy where light. That's what happened to Jesus. He said, you will see angels ascending and descending from the head of the man, of the Son of God. That's a fireful man. A fireful man is a man that always carries spiritual activity in his soul. There is always a movement of the spirit in his life. When a man loses fire, that movement is truncated. It is replaced by movies, stories, and the lust of this life. But when a man is on fire, he will be alone and having fun. And you are wondering, who are you talking to? You can't tell. He has many visitors at many times. And sometimes this thing will graduate from your soul to your environment. I read the story of Maharishi of Mankailash. Somebody visited him. The guy was so on fire. Oh, God of mercy. He prayed until a point came. God took him and took him to a cave. And when this guy, Sadhu Sundar Singh, saw him, he was 400 years old at that time. Because the Lord took his heart, exchanged his heart, and said, you will not die. And when he met him in that mountain, the guy was naked, but every hair on his body was as long as his height. So he was clothed with hair. And the guy fell and fainted. He thought he met a white beast. And when he woke up, this man did some things and woke him up. And he said, who are you? He said, wait, St. Francis is here. And the moment he said St. Francis is here, they appeared in heaven. And they came back. It was like 5 minutes. The man said, we have been in heaven for 7 days. He had trafficked heaven and earth until he could calibrate the spiritual time as against the natural time. You can go to heaven for 1 second and you will not know that it's 1 year on earth. But there is a man that have trafficked the two realms so much that he knows the measuring parameter between these two realms. He said, we've been in heaven for 7 days. He said, but now let me talk to you. And he began to tell the man his story. He told him, some of the revival meetings you have, what happens is that God appoints some of us to attend those meetings. And sometimes we come with the spirit of just men made perfect. So you are in a meeting, power of God is moving when you have not given command. maybe a being entered the auditorium. You were not aware. See, the reason the church can't fail is not just because we are praying. There are many mysteries that guard our existence. The devil can't understand it. There are many men today that God has separated from civilization to keep as intercessors over the church. Just in case the intercessors of a generation fail, there are many other intercessors that God downloaded from another generation. That's why the body of John was not found. Today, John is one of the intercessors of the church. So even if all the intercessors in this generation fail, there are many like John praying. The church will stand. But it takes fire to enter into that level of spiritual traffic. Fire is not just activity in the natural. It's not activity on the external. It's activity within. Within. There are many whispers of the spirit. There are many movements of the spirit in your soul. So much so that you are so inspired that it becomes difficult for you. You find it difficult. That's the man of fire. There is the movement of the spirit perpetual in the soul. I'm not talking when you hear a preaching and you say, oh God, help me, help me. Which preaching? Sometimes a man is so much on fire that if he enters a meeting and you are not talking from where he is, he will leave you in that meeting and he's in a trance. I'm not talking this loftiness of men that look down on ministers. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about intense spiritual traffic in your soul, that if a man doesn't enter that atmosphere, he can't bless you. You will leave the meeting literally, and the next time you appear in the meeting, they are sharing grace. You say, what happened? What did they preach? You were in another world. That's what men must carry to escape the defilement of this generation. And this may not be for ordinary believers anyway, but those who are pastors, they understand what I'm saying. Fire! A spiritual activity in the soul of a man. And I tell you the truth, everybody is on fire. It just depends on the spirit that is burning within you. There are many people that are burning with Big Brother Niger every second. They will tell you everybody that were evicted from the house from the last 5 seasons. They don't need to think. There are many people that are burning with Man United, Arsenal and Chelsea. I was there. They used to call me Skywide. I can tell you the history of Arsenal from more than 100 years. I can narrate everything. I can tell you all the matches they played in the season, who scored, the time when they scored. I was on fire for football. See, when it's Friday, our body begins to itch us because we can't wait for Saturday. And those days, we didn't even have money to pay for matches. So what we do is that we go to the studio around 9 a.m. and sweep everywhere, so that we'll have a seat. So we sweep the hall, tidy the hall, arrange all the benches, and then they give us a slot. We will sit there from morning till night. When we finish Premier League, we enter La Liga. And when we finish La Liga, sometimes we know if we come home that day we are finished, but we will not remember. It's around 8:30, our heart will now start beating. Jesus, I've not gone home since morning. And then when you are coming home, you are sneaking. You will go to the window and give your sister a sign. I am the one. Tonya, I am the one. Open the door. Open the door. And my sisters will come and open the door. You will not hear what. They'll be telling you will not hear. And then sometimes when you are entering, then you will see my dad in the parlor waiting for you. They will deal with you that night. Me and my friend, their house was opposite ours. Sometimes when I successfully escape, I'll check in the window. Then I'll see him. The father will say, lie down here. And they will flog him around 9 p.m. Meanwhile, your food, they kept it. It has become cold. But you forgot about food because of the burnings in your spirit. You are not only concerned about whether Arsenal will win. When Arsenal wins, you are now